Okay, so other half of Angkor and Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom. So Angkor Thom, which is the later structure. Remember, Angkor is the city. Angkor Wat is a Hindu temple complex. Angkor Thom is actually a Buddhist temple complex. Angkor Thom is built by Sayurvarman II, and he's the guy who made Angkor Wat with the temple dedicated to Vishnu, and the images look like him because there's a kind of a joining of the image of the king with the image of the god, because the king in Cambodian tradition, the king's image is worshipped. Jayavarman the seventh actually adopts Buddhism as his religion. Now, remember that when we're talking about, I've mentioned that Buddhism, takes different shades and different executions depending on where it is. So even though he's adopted Buddhism, Hinduism isn't gone, okay, because that makes sense, because of course Buddhism is offshoot, right? And so Jayavarman the Seventh builds more than all the other Khmer kings put together. And we continue the moat tradition. Again, all of this is built on water, or lots of water around it. Okay. So here is the south gate to Angkor Thom. All right. I know it mentions again Hindu up here because that comes from the Hindu tradition, even though this is Buddhist, right? So as I mentioned, he just turned to Buddhism again, and he made both the Buddha images inside Angkor Thom as well as different bodhisattvas, also to look like the king. So just following that tradition. Okay, here's a Buddha, right? Understood to be similar in looks to Jayavarman. All right, finally, we're going to do Lakshmana temples. So you need to watch this general video about Hindu temples and then come back to this presentation, or finish through this presentation, then go back and watch the Hindu temples video, as well as look more carefully at the slides I'm going to go through very quickly. So again, the Lakshmana temple, Kajurahara, India. So if we look at it from the side, first of all, Kajurahara, there are lots of temples here. We're just looking at one of the many, many temples that are here. So if we look at it, we can see, okay, we've got, different levels, at least from, like visually from the outside. If we look carefully, we can see a bunch of relief carving. We're going to look specifically at this wall in the of the relief carving. And the relief carving, of course, goes all the way around, which, of course, is going to lead you to believe, correctly so, that people are meant to walk around, circumambulate before they fully enter the temple. And as we look also at the side, we can see, we have these kind of different high points here. So the idea is that the top of the temple is supposed to be suggestive of mountain peaks. All right. So every bit there's some kind of ornament or carving. So there's no place that you can look that there's not something to look at. This is going to be connected to the idea that, or symbolic of the generosity of the gods. And so because the gods are so generous, you're going to make a temple that reflects that generosity. And so there's going to be just great abundance within the temple. So we have these smaller peaks on the temple, and those are representative of the foothills that you walk past or on as you approach Mount Kailash. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. If somebody wants to help me, that's fine. Which is the sacred mountain home of the gods. We keep talking a lot about sacred mountains, right? That keeps coming up again. All right. And the whole thing is on an elevated platform. All right. We're going to get into this. So you're looking at this and you might be thinking, what's going on? Well, what's happening is exactly what you think is happening. This is a tantric couple, and this is actually on that wall, on that kind of jointure wall This one here. And I'll go back and I'll talk more about that in a second. But yes, so we have images of, couples engaged in sexual activity. Don't forget this, guys. So not exactly the same, but like the sexual metaphor is not unheard of in religious situations, right? So it's not particularly new, it's not anything new. Um, so we have a lot of very voluptuous, very beautiful women depicted. And so these very voluptuous, beautiful women were understood to be, very auspicious, very lucky. You might want to think about that image of that fertility goddess outside on the Toranas at the Great Stupa at Sanchi. And so so all of these really beautiful women, you want to think about what women's bodies can represent, fertility and growth and prosperity, of course, because there is a creation of more through a woman's body. And the couples who are actually engaged in sexual congress are known as Mithuna. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that as well. If you want to correct me, please do. And those images of them together is understood to be symbolic of union with the divine, and then the final release from samsara, which you already know about because you watched that Khan Academy video with Sal Khan talking about Hinduism, right? So the images, yes, are definitely erotic, but they're not meant to be titillating, or like they're not meant to get people hot and bothered. They are, the sexual union that you see among the couples is symbolic. Then remember, of that union with the divine, and so it's symbolic, not you know not meant to be pornographic or anything like that. Okay, so this particular temple that we've got was when it was one of the first built by the Chandela kings. Hey, guess what kings like? Why do they want to build temples? What's one good reason why they want to build a temple? Because through the building of a temple, you establish or reinforce your legitimacy, right? And so that's why we have this particular temple. And as I mentioned, this whole Kachuharo has a lot of temples there. All right, so Lakshmana, the main deity is Vishnu, right? So remember, if you're Hindu, you are going to likely worship one of there are many gods in the Hindu pantheon, but your main focus of worship is going to be probably one of a smaller number of gods. Vishnu is one of those gods who is very popular in terms of worship, and so this temple is dedicated to Vishnu, and the image of the god that the temple is dedicated to is always going to be in what we call the womb changer, or the Garbhagira, right? It's the holy of holies. So this inner sanctum part of the temple, and that's where the statue of the god is, and it's very small. And so it's a dark, windowless room. So it's very, very different from the other worship spaces that we have studied so far, because it's meant really for either individual worship or very, very, very tiny groups, right? So because it's a very close and intimate exchange with the divine when you're in that very holy womb chamber room. All right. This is officially called Nagara style architecture. All right. We'll talk about the Vimana, which is the kind of peaks over the womb chamber. I mentioned the womb chamber. That's where the image of the god is, right? And then we have this entryway porch, which has a flat roof known as a mandapa. The juncture wall is where those images of the couples in sexual union would be, the juncture wall, and that makes sense. Things coming together, right? Here is the divine part, right? Because that's where the image of the god is going to be, and here is where you kind of approach the god. So it's kind of like man and the divine, and that's where the union takes place, right? Why do I have that twice? That's weird. Whoops. Go back. All right. So we have, let's see here, base platform, a large superstructure. Right. So it's elevated, and it's elevated so that it can be seen from a different distance. You can memorize these terms or not, but it's elevated so it can be seen from a different distance. And again, like I said, it's supposed to be indicative or represent the kind of mountain peaks. Okay. All right. So to interact with the space, you go to it from the east, walk around it. You look at hopefully you look at some of the sculptures, the relief sculptures. You'll see images, not just of those couples, but images from daily life. And in this particular temple also has historical events from the Chandala period. All right, why did I do that? That's not what I meant to do. Here we go. All right, and then after that, you climb the stairs, right, and then you'll see other images. One of the images you'll see is Ganesh, which is that elephant-headed god. That may sound familiar to you or seem familiar to you. So he indicates that you're going in the right direction. Ganesh is a god that usually gets worshipped at the beginnings of things. Right. So I'll let you read this yourself. And I also, if you would like to watch, if you'd like to watch more of the video, which is not just about our temple, but the other videos, the other temples in Kajaharo, then you can do that as well. Okay. So make sure you go over this whole presentation. Thank you.